Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 3M Open. This is going to be my all-in-one show where I'm going to go over a preview, everything you need to know on the course. I'm going to give you my picks from a DFS side, and of course, I'll cover my betting cards towards the end of the preview show. First and foremost, thank you for stopping by. Give me about an hour. I'm going to try to get through all this information for you to get you ready to select your DFS lineups and, of course, get some bets in, hopefully quickly. All right, let's go talk a little golf. I do want to talk a little bit. We had, of course, two events running, just like we did the previous with the Scottish. We had the Barracuda, and, of course, we had the Open. So I'll talk real brief about that. I'm not going to spend much time at all on the recap. But if you didn't see the Barracuda, of course, Akshay Bhatia gets his first win on the PGA Tour, has full status now, and it also got him vaulted into the FedEx Cup playoffs right now, where I believe he sits somewhere around 70th. And, of course, he's there shaking hands with my buddy Patrick Rogers, who we were also waiting to get his first win. I've been betting on quite a bit this year, but I did get to hit Akshay Bhatia 50-1. That really kind of saved my weekend. Didn't have the greatest weekend on the Open, but we'll talk a little bit about that. And I think Patrick Rogers was something like 25-1, 28-1. I did not bet him. So for me, it kind of worked out pretty well on the Barracuda side. And if you didn't see any of it, of course, Patrick Rogers had a birdie putt on 18, about a 10-footer uphill. If he'd have made that, he would have won and no playoff. He did not. Hence, went to a playoff with Akshay. And on the first hole, he hit a drive, Patrick Rogers, in the fairway, landed into a divot, and he landed into the backside of the divot where he could not really get a club on it very well. He kind of chunked it. Long story short, he bogeyed the hole. Akshay parred it, and that was that. So we got a few players. I do have the leaderboard that we'll cover from the top guys at the Barracuda, just so you can see, because that stroke gain data, there's not stroke gain data for it, does not get pulled into Fantasy National, but at least you can kind of see some of the guys that did well if you did not watch the Barracuda at all. All right, so let's change gears and talk about the Open Championship. Curious how you guys thought it was. For me personally, I'm kind of glad we're back over to the States. You know, from a viewing perspective, it's a lot harder when they're having, I don't know, from an Eastern Standard Time, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock tee times. But, I enjoyed watching the coverage that I could. But long story short, of course, Brian Harman sitting there. And I grabbed this picture because I thought it was pretty funny that nobody was in the stands. As if you watched India coverage on Sunday, poor Brian Harman was definitely not being rooted for by really, I think, anyone. And then from, the perspective of the people that do the DFS and betting, I did not bet Brian Harman. Now, it's funny, I stated that I would be excited if somebody except like the top, 10 guys won the tournament, but I was not thinking Brian Harman. And of course, I did not bet him. Now, funny enough, out of my top kind of 20 player pool for the Millie Maker, I picked Brian Harman, which is pretty rare for me. I don't typically pick Brian Harman, but seeing what the weather was going to be like and the personality that he has, that kind of bulldog grinder, I also didn't think the tournament was going to get like we saw last year at 20 under. I thought, hey, it's a pretty good fit. He's been playing well again. As I mentioned, he had a really good swing season, so it had been coming 2022 to 2023. And then he kind of, his game fell apart a bit, early on this year, even later spring. And then the last few tournaments, his game is all of a sudden picked back up. And a lot of it has to do with the putter. Of course, he led the field in stroke gain with the putter. I don't have the stats. Again, Fantasy National is not pulling in the stroke gain data. You can find it on Data Golf if you're interested. It was kind of over before it began. The way I looked at it, Brian Harman, I think, took the lead coming out of round 2 and never gave it back and started, I believe, 5 under. I think the closest it got was John Rahm, got within 3 strokes. I actually bet John Rahm live, I think somewhere early on in his day 3 or round 3 Saturday round, where he just kind of started to get on a heater. And I bet him actually after he made his first birdie of the front 9, and I got him at like 30-1, something like that. So, of course, I was pulling for John Rahm to win the thing, but it just wasn't as typical to follow up a 63 at the Open. He just didn't make the putts. Hit the ball well. Literally, I don't think I can remember. It's been a while since watching a major where it felt like everybody was rooting for Brian Harman to collapse. And to be honest, after he was leading Friday, I kind of expected. So typically with Brian Harman, you do get one kind of bad round. And it looked like it was going to happen Saturday where he came out and bogeyed. I think had 2 bogeys in the first 4 holes and then kind of got it back. And then he did the same thing on Sunday, right? He bogeyed a couple holes. As I mentioned, John Rahm got it within 3 strokes at one time. Then, of course, Rahm couldn't keep that momentum going. Brian Harman made a couple more birdies and ended up winning, I believe, by like 6 shots. So good for him. Long story short, it's over. Now we're on to, we got 3M, we got the Wyndham, and then we get the FedEx Cup playoffs, and then, we're into the swing season. So hopefully you enjoyed the major season. Like I said, for me, the weather did kind of show up, but there wasn't a lot of back and forth or, a lot of excitement come Sunday, really. I mean, you could see the broadcasters, Faldo and Azinger and whoever, trying to manufacture some possible excitement, but it was kind of over before it began, in my own personal opinion. Let's switch gears. We are moving over to Blaine, Minnesota, so flying back across the pond. And, of course, we were talking about the 3M Open, and they're going to be pegging up their T-ball at the old TPC Twin Cities. This course opened back in 2000, but the actual first PGA Tour event took place in 2019. If you do not remember that, that was the era of Matthew Wolff. It could have been one of his first events on the PGA Tour, but it was when Hovland, Wolff, Morikawa all came out right around this time frame. And, of course, Matthew Wolff won the first inaugural event at TPC Twin Cities. And I believe it came down to Morikawa and Bryson DeChambeau. It's been a while. I think he chipped in for an eagle. And I don't think it went to a playoff. I think he chipped in for it to not go to a playoff. But, again, that's all past memory. Of course, Arnold Palmer is your architect here. We're at a par 71, and it is playing at 7,431 yards, which that's a pretty big boy course for a par 71. And we are back to a bunch of bent grass. So fairways are bent grass. The rough, the reason why that green arrow is there, it was for a reminder for me that typically the rough here is at 3 inches. But this year, what I'm getting from the superintendent's sheets is that it's actually at 4 inches of that bluegrass fescue mix, which we've seen quite a bit here recently. And again, as I mentioned, the greens are bent. We got a full player field at 156 players, cut to T65 and ties. And historical cut line here is somewhere between 1 under to 2 under. And past winning scores, honestly, I think probably a little better number would be 15 under to 20 under. So, but I think the last few, and you can see that right there. So Finau, of course, won last year at 17 under. They went back to back, won the Rocket Mortgage, and then he won this. And then my buddy Griot, who's actually done very well at this track and has been playing really good golf, as we've seen again at the Open. And, of course, winning the Charles Schwab recently. He shot 14 under last year, so he was second. And then my buddy Cam Champ that I hit at, I believe it was 80-1 in 2021. A pretty weak field. He won at 15 under, and then Louis and Charles Schwartzel were right behind him at 13 under. And what I always remember was that I think Louis never played this tournament before, and Charles Schwartzel and him are really good buddies. And he said, hey, come out, give it a whirl. I think they played together, in Zurich or something like that. And long story short, Louis almost won the damn thing. Again, from my memory, that was the first time I ever playing it. And then, of course, in 2020, my buddy Blackbeard, which for people that don't know who that is, Michael Thompson, won at 19 under, and then Adam Long was second. And this was also the same year that Richie Wawrinski was, back and forth with Thompson early on as the leaders. And, just a total side note, I think I Googled a month ago, where is Michael Thompson? I mean, I have not seen him in a few months. So I'm guessing he's injured, but, heard nothing about it. But he's not in the field. Well, I'll check that. But as far as I know, he's on the field. And then while I'm on that topic, Daniel Berger, there was talks that he was going to be back, I don't know, a month or two ago. And nothing. He hasn't tweeted anything. So no clue what that guy's doing. Maybe he's just taking a full year off and going to start off in the swing season. Who knows? But of course, he was dealing with some back issues. And then while we're on it, Will Z, as far as I know, will be back probably to kick off the new year after the Tournament of Champions. Okay. Anyways, that was a little off target, and I digress. Let's get back to the course. Pretty large greens here at 6,500 square feet. So I'd say it's about 1,000 square feet per green, larger than the average PGA Tour green. You've got 72 sand bunkers, and I want to understand if the fairways are some of the easiest to hit. We'll get into a bunch of stats that I have. They also did some narrowing. But anyways, 8 gives a fairway, 28. So, we start to look at the guys who've won here. You've got some room, but also, right, you've got a lot of water. And hence, I think they have 27 water hazards, but literally only 15 come into play. And then if you actually do a little bit of analysis that I did, was actually 10 of them actually come into play hitting off the tee. So Stimator, we're back to 12, so we were putting on some slower greens while we were over in the UK, and now that we're back here, we're back to kind of PGA standards around 12. I got some pass notes. Well, I guess, I didn't put on here course defense, but you can pretty much see that it's going to be water, of course, if wind shows up. But this course, I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not crazy. And really, the par threes are some of the course defense, and then a few par fours are pretty long. That's where all that yardage comes from. What I was stating was, 3M typically will open up for some long shots that we've seen in the past. Again, that also hints the field. If I remember off the top of my head, I think Tony Finau is number one. You got Hideki Matsuyama in the field. You've got some guys that are trying to improve their FedEx ratings. Of course, Justin Thomas, who has tried this. I believe he even played the John Deere, missed the cut. He, of course, missed the cut at the Open. I believe he shot 82 his opening round, then shot even at the Open the next day. You've got Cam Young, who also played the John Deere, trying to get his standings up there. And, of course, the putter for both those guys. I think with Thomas, it's actually worse. I think it's more a lot of things. But for our buddy Cam Young, who was right up there again at the Open with a chance to win, well, in contention. I mean, he was in second, right, going into Sunday. But again, his putter has been letting him down. Where I was going with all that is that long shots have popped up here. So if you think about Matthew Wolff, but you also got to remember, right, Matthew Wolff at the time was a rookie coming off, out of college or whatever. And he won at 125 to 1. My buddy Blackbeard won at 100 to 1. And then, I just mentioned Adam Long was 150 to 1 during that time. I do believe, though, that Tony Finau was the odds-on favorite last year, probably going off somewhere around, 10 to 1, 12 to 1. A couple notes here. One of the easiest courses to drive. And let's see here. The inaugural event, the average distance was over 300 yards with hitting the fairway 65% of the time. So, again, we're going to be looking for driving distance. But I do want to look at fairways hit because, you can blow up. I off the top of my head, I think of my buddy EVR, Eric Van Ruin, who has had some opportunities at this track and then just literally blew up, taking a double or triple, hitting it in the water. What are the easier courses to hit greens and reg because of the size? And I guess if they do not hit the green, that it can typically be a little harder to get up and down. But seems like it. Like I said, I've got some more stats that we'll go over to talk about that. All right, I think that's good on the course breakdown portion. Let's go take a look at this thing real quick. Literally, it's be pretty quick, right? To your right, you just got a view of one of the holes. Of course, water. A lot of this kind of slope, quite a bit of bunkering, and a bit of slopey greens, but again, pretty large green. And then if you look at the routing, again, all this is showing is where the water kind of comes into play. You can see it's a TPC course. So, typically, as I mentioned, this is a course that anybody can play, and but they also can handle a PGA event. Compared to some of the TPC courses, I think this is one of the tougher ones, at least what shows up. And again, that comes down to the par threes, some long par fours. And then whenever I think of this, of course, when I hit Cameron Champ here, when he actually could have hit a 3-wood here, but he hit a driver all week. He hit the driver. He hit it over in here in a bad spot. But luckily, he got it back in fairway, then had like a 100-yard pitch, stuck it within a foot, and then made the par, and hence won. So whenever I look at this routing, that's what I think of. Okay, let's take a quick look at the scorecard. I saw no advantages of trying to take guys. Again, this is more on the showdown for the consecutive birdie bonus. I think you could take them off the first or the 10th. I don't see an advantage. The reason why is if you look at the 9th, it is the toughest hole. So, taking guys off the front, you're probably not going to hit it here. And then if you take someone off the 10th, we're kind of looking, even though 18 and 1, but you've also got that backed with the number 2 hardest and the number 6. Now, again, you could kind of make an argument if you want to take a shot at it. If somehow they could birdie either 17, which is a tough par 3, or this long par 4, then, you do have 15 and 16. So I don't know, maybe I'd take a shot at showdown, take some more guys off, going off 10 for the first 2 days and see how it resonates. But again, I kind of already talked through, you've got, again, some of these very tough, so a couple of toughest holes are these very long par 4s. And then 3 out of the 4 par 3s are 200 plus. So you got a 202, you got a 228, and you got another 204. And typically those kind of show up if you manage those wells, manage the long par 4s, and then you have some scoring opportunities on the par 5. And I believe you have 3 par 5s. Yep. So standard par kind of 71. Okay, so that's that. I did check against the official scorecard, and the yardages and everything's spot on, so we're good to go there. Nothing changed since last year. All right, so let's look at a couple of these stats that I pulled in. So, and I kind of just break it down to three things. So you got very easy greens, hence Cameron Champ, who's a terrible putter, is one here. You can look at also Tony Finau, typically not a good putter. But you can see at the 3M Open, inside 5 feet, it's the 5th easiest. Inside 10 feet, 2nd easiest. And from 15 to 25 is the 4th easiest to actually make, they make your putts. I don't know if they're actually stating birdies, but make percentage. So I guess if it's for par or for birdie, it doesn't matter. If you're in that distance, some of the easiest greens on tour to make. Hitting the greens when going for it. So I guess they would be stating gettable par 5s, yeah. Number 1 would be Sedgefield, Wailea, Torrey Pines, South. That's kind of interesting. And then TPC Twin Cities, then Detroit Golf Club. So very gettable par 5s. Got to do your scoring there. And then last, I already mentioned these very tough par 3s. And you can see 2nd and 6th hardest, again, on the PGA Tour. And we also got a lot of balls in the water. What does it say? Most balls in the water of any hole on the PGA Tour was the 17th hole here, 6th hardest. So again, the par 3s are the things that we'll have to put in the model to see who can handle the longer par 3s. Typically that comes in a ball striking. All right, so let's look at what some of the top 10 finishers did very well, and pretty typical, right? I mean, approach, I've always said, is king. You kind of had a mixed bag. So this is the year Cameron Champ won. I mentioned Louis Oosthuizen and Charles Schwartzel. But if you look at his board, right, Cameron Champ at the time, one of the best drivers on tour, length and accuracy. Johnny Vegas, I'd put right in that bucket, just purely. And then, Keith Mitchell, you put Mito Pure in there. I don't know about K.H. Lee. Adam had one I would not consider a long off the tee. And then if you kind of look at their putting, that's pretty unique, right? Killer Keith gained 7 strokes with the putter, but lost on approach, but definitely gained off the tee. Funny enough, Cameron Champ didn't gain a whole lot off the tee, but he did very well with the irons. And for him, just had probably one of his best putting outings ever. But if you go back to Cameron Champ's wins, he's always, that's when the putter just clicked. And funny enough, if I remember right, I think it has been on bent grass. So it's something we'll have to look at, that it might be his best putting surface. And then we look at the year Blackbeard / Michael Thompson won. He did it all with the irons, did not gain off tee, but also with the putter. Trying to see if anybody kind of this year does not really stick out like a lot of bombers. I mean, you can see Tony Finau would be in there. I consider him a bomber. Adam Long, not him. He's not a bomber. This was more almost like a plotter. It's like Richie Warinsky actually has got some sneaky distance, a little over 300, but Trigali, Charles Howell, he actually, funny enough, does have diffs. It's been so long since I've seen CH3, but he's got some pop in his bat, actually, over 300 on average. So anyways, I don't know. But again, the one thing that shows up over and over, irons. And then the year Matthew Wolff won is kind of a goofy order, but the first year, 2019, still a lot of, you got some bombers here, right? DeChambeau, Wolff, Wyndham Clark, Sammy Burns, he's got distance. But again, irons show up heavily. And again, you see you don't have to do it with the putter. So again, what it all really is sustaining, you can get it done a couple of different ways. But then if I look at the most recent, man, the guys really gained off the tee, the top 4 guys. And then, of course, the irons. And again, you can get away, as Tony Finau shows, without the putter. Same with Tom Hoge. But, of course, at this time, Tom Hoge was leading almost everybody with approach. And we'll look at that as there's some certain approach distances that are probably the most relevant or interesting. Just side note, Colin Tarrant, who we've been on the last few tournaments, showed up here last year. I actually think this was the first event that he came on my radar. Of course, Scott Piercy also, if I remember right, was this the year, I guess it was, that he was actually leading going into Sunday and then just fell apart. Okay, and then real quick, I just pulled this up. Of course, you can go do deeper dive, but a lot of the players that we're going to see here this week at the 3M also played at the Barracuda. And of course, Akshay, as I mentioned, just won. You had Patrick Rogers, he's in the field. You got Ryan Gerard, who is in the field. I believe Hahn is, Hadley is. I don't know for sure Bo Hauser, but I'm guessing EVR. Joel Damon's in the field. Cameron Champ is in the field. So quite a few of these guys. These are top 17 and above at the Barracuda. That's all that I was going to show you, just some names. But yeah, you might want to go take a look at, because I mean, again, going back to recent form, but because the model will not grab that, we don't have stroke gain data from the Barracuda. Okay, so with all that said, the player profile that I'm looking at from a stroke gain model custom stat building, that's a lot set into one. My custom stat models, what I'm looking at. Number one, ball striking is what I'm looking for. Of course, that is off the tee and irons all together. Then again, I'm doubling down on the irons. I want guys that bomb it off the tee, but also hit the fairways. So we'll see how that comes out. I'm going to look at guys putting. It does show up, and also bent. But I did show you there's ways possibly that, team no putt could do very well here. The proximity of the pin that I'm going to go with that shows up, I think actually more about 22% of the time, is this 175 to 200 yards out. I'm going to plug in these tough par threes. As I mentioned, you got one at 225, and then the other two fall in this 200 to 225 range, and then guys that make birdies. So again, I've kind of honed this model down comparative to what I had last year. All right, so with all that said, I created a custom stat model in Fantasy National, and we are looking at this first one at recent form. And what does that mean? I'm looking at the past 6 tournaments, 24 rounds of golf, no filters turned on, and then my weightings against those stroking categories I just went over. Ball striking at 15, approach at 25, driving distance at 15%, fairways gained at 10, proximity from that 175 to 200 yards out at 10%. I put 10% on these par threes. Putting, I put 5% because, again, I feel, as shown in the past, that this is a pretty easy course to putt. And then birdies at 10% because, again, we can get to that 20 under number. And with all that said, if you are interested, oh, and by the way, this money line number, of course, that is the odds, the betting odds coming out of Draftkings. If you're curious, Seb Straka, number 1, Emiliano Grillo, Lucas Glover, so all the guys that have been playing really good golf. Of course, Seb just won the John Deere. Grillo just won the Charles Schwab. And then Lucas Glover has been nipping away. He came close to winning the Barbasol and just didn't make enough putts on Sunday there. You got Gary Woodland, who's been actually ball striking amazingly. It's just the putter been letting him down. Seems like Hideki's getting better form. Austin Eckroat also was on our radar. I believe he really showed up at TPC Craig Ranch for the Byron Nelson. Ludwig Aberg, of course, been playing very good golf. Just made the transition over to the PGA Tour and has been, top 10 in almost every time. Vincent Norman also almost won. I believe that was the Barracuda. He was right up there. And I believe he was also up there at the Barbasol. Ches Reavie playing good golf. Cam Champ, Stefan Jaeger, Adam Hadwin, right, who also had, I guess it was the John Deere had a good shot. Mark Hubbard, my buddy Kevin Roy, who we've been taking these long shots on, shows up again. And then, of course, your past champion, Tony Finau, and also the odds favorite to win this thing. Okay, and then if I want to do what I call the recent form, this is looking at just the past 3 tournaments. Now, again, remember, also the Open is not pulled into this for whatever reason. Fantasy National, even though there was stroke gain data that's out there, but if it's I guess not on the PGA Tour app, then it is not getting pulled into Fantasy National. But again, if you want to do your own due diligence, you can go to Data Golf. They were having stroke gain data over there. But with that said, last 3 tournaments, again, no filters turned on. Lucas Glover moves to number 1. Ches Reavie, Gary Woodland, Stefan Jaeger, it's Peter Keist, right? Actually, it's Peter Quest. Now I'm going to forget what tournament it was. He Monday qualified, almost won the damn thing. And I picked him, because he also Monday qualified for TPC Craig Ranch. So very interesting. And I think he's going off around 80 to 1 over at PointsBet. I'll let you know right now. Of course, I already bet him at that 80 to 1, but I think that's pretty good value still. Tyler Pendrith, it makes total sense. He should do well here. I kind of think the Rocket Mortgage Detroit Golf Club is a good comp course. Bent greens, just kind of, bomb it out there, and a lot of similarities in my own personal opinion, also within fields. Cameron Young, mentioned again, trying to get that FedEx Cup rating, trying to get that first win. Seb Straka, Hubbard, Grillo, Sig. Had a good showing here last year. Aaron Rye, been really good, the ball striking. Vincent Norman, Hideki Matsuyama, and there's Trevor Cohn, who's kind of interested in me. I think at the Barracuda, maybe it was after day 2 he was leading that, but he was, had a pretty good showing there. maybe not the greatest weekend, but I know his name was up there after like day 2. But you can actually get him, I think it's like 400 to 1 over at PointsBet, and I took a shot at that too. So I'll let you in on that. Okay, so remember, it's only been the 5th year of this tournament at TPC Twin Cities, so we got about 4 years of data. And so with that said, I wanted to look at the guys who has historically done well here now, right? A lot of these guys don't play this over and over, but some of these guys have. Of course, Tony Finau, #1, past champion. Also, will show he's got a top 10 here before that, but he's played this tournament 3 times. Hadwin's played it quite a bit. You're going to notice like a 4 for Hodges, only played it once. Straka's played it twice. Got Matsuyama, who played it last year, playing it again. Got Griot, who actually missed a cut, but also had 2 good finishes here. Colin Tarrant played it last year. Cam Davis, actually a pretty good fit for this. Again, if you comp it against the Rocket Mortgage, that's not bad odds. Maybe check PointsBet, you maybe get a 50 to 1. Hammer and Hank Laboda, I've kind of been off him for a little while. Like a couple summers ago, we were really looking for him to get a win, but does show up here. And I haven't really done analysis on how lefties do here, but I'd have to kind of go through the course map. Maybe there is something with that, but he had a good outing here prior. Grayson Sigg, Sungjae Im, Cam Champ, Matty Wallace, Adam Long, and then Henrik Norlander. Just a side note, I didn't bet him yet here, but I have been betting him, especially he's been playing those alternate tournaments. But could be interesting at that like 400 to 1 number. I still think is a kind of, for me, but gonna have a breakthrough. Like I've been waiting for him to get his first win. I've always kind of put him there, right, with Sepp Straka from a ball striking perspective. I just feel like Sepp Straka's putter has definitely heated up versus Henrik Norlander. But if you look here, he's done some really good things, and you can make enough to say, hey, I'm going to take put a few bucks on Henrik Norlander. All right, and then if you want to look at it for the past 4 tournaments here, total strokes gained. If you're curious, #1 is Tony Finau, but he's also played here 4 times. You got Hadwin, Bryce Garnett pops up. You got Sungjae Im, played here twice, but good showing both times. Adam Long, 3 out of 4 good showings. You got Griot, a T2 and a T3, so really fits him. Again, a really good ball striker, just needs that putter, but it seems like here has clicked a couple times. Cam Davis, Laboda, Hoagie, Michael Glikic, Dougie Gim, my broke-back buddy, Petty Kazire, which I think right now my new one's EVR. For some reason, I keep betting that guy. I have no idea why, and just losing money on him. And of course, these are alternate tournaments that he played in. Robert Streb, Troy Merritt, we'll talk about him on the betting side. Scott Piercy, Cameron Champion. Again, Scott Piercy's last really good chance to win a tournament was here. I believe that was last year. Yeah, when he had the T4. And I think he was leading by I felt like it was like 4 or 5 strokes. And then he just had a pure meltdown. All right, if you're looking at, I do believe best ball strikers here. Like if I had to weigh anything, probably #1 would be ball striking, and then let the rest of it just hope they make a putt. Of course, Lucas Glover, I mentioned, went to that, I don't know, kind of a half pendulum putter. It's definitely a longer putter, but since then has been putting better. Still not great, but better. Gary Woodland, Hideki Matsuyama, Aaron Rai, Ryan Palmer fits right into that Lucas Glover, Griot camp. I mean, Griot's actually been putting very well this year, so I have a hard time to put him in there, but historically, Griot would fit the ball striking no putt camp. Dougie Gim, Cam Champ, Vincent Norman. There's my buddy Griot. Trevor Cohn, who I told you I've already took a shot at like 400 to 1. JJ Spawn also had a pretty good Barracuda. Just side note, Tony Finau, Chun Yu, I believe that's Kevin Yu, if I remember right, and Luke Liss and Ludwig Edberg rounds out to give you the top 15 ball strikers against, just purely my model. No filters, past 24 rounds of golf. Okay, now we want to look at just looking purely at the irons, as again, approach is king. And what did I do here? Again, as I've been showing you, I set approach at 50%, and then I put in the 2 proximities that show up the most. It's this 200 plus, and then the 175 to 200. In the big model, I just focused on this one. And #1 comes up Hideki Matsuyama, again, over the past 6 tournaments. So an eye on recent form. Past 24 rounds, you got Lucas Glover, Nate Lashley's up there, been playing good golf, Ches Reavie, Cam Champ, Sepp Straka, Eric Cole, Gary Woodland, Hoagie, Justin Lauer, who's also been leading putting on bent, which I probably got coming up next. Justin Thomas, Kevin Roy, Luke List, Austin Eckroat, and Sahith Theegala, who had a really rough first day at the Open. I believe he shot like 8 over, which I did not pick him, and I told you guys why. I knew that you could not be spraying that ball over the place like Sahith can do. Also, probably doesn't fit that great for this course. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna wait till we get a little more room. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to kind of back and forth because this course does show up as an easier course to drive, but man, with so much water, I could see Sahith going through a few sleeves of balls. All right, and then I mentioned if you want to know, if you take the angle of, hey, I want to build a team that's just really good putting on bent, even though I don't think that's a real strong need here, but you could also tie it together with some of this like approach. So Sahith, funny enough, you can see hitting fairways, as I mentioned, he's like last in the field out of these guys. But, he does got distance. He is good with the irons, good with this proximity. It does make birdies. So, figure it out. But Justin Lauer, number one, putting on bent greens. This is over the last 24 rounds. And we've had a lot of bent greens. We go back to like the PGA and, let's see, Wells Fargo, that kind of time frame. So like, I don't know, June time frame. So not too old of data this is getting pulled from. Of course, JT Poston showed up at the John Deere, been playing better golf. Justin Suh, Justin Hadley, Theegala, Montgomery. Kind of feels like Montgomery is like the only thing he can do lately is putt. Eric Cole, Richard Wierenski shows up. My buddy, I know I have not taken a stab at that yet, but I probably should. Adam Long, Aaron Badley, Harry Higgs, Sanjay M, Matthias Schmid, CT Pan, Doc Redman, Seabez, and Austin Eckroat. This is actually your top 17. I think I threw Austin Eckroat in here because I know he's going to get a lot of steam from a betting side, as I also bet him at 80-1. All right, and then to handle these long par threes, which actually Troy Merritt also is interesting to me. Something about when he's on bent greens. Also, I guess I go back to that Rocket Mortgage comp. So I kind of like where he's priced at from an odds perspective. But right now, over the past 6 rounds, 24 rounds, or sorry, 6 tournaments, 24 rounds of golf. If you're curious who's been handling these long par threes the best, Troy Merritt, JT Poston, Griot, Jonathan Bidd, Gary Woodland, Peter Quest, Schnedeker, Montgomery. The Schnedeker one's a little interesting because he's only played a couple tournaments, right? He was hurt for a while, so some of that could be old data. Nikolai Horgard, which could be an interesting play, definitely from a DFS side. I don't know if I want to bet him at 50-1. I'd like to get a little better odds than that, but that's me personally. Jimmy Walker, Seb Straka, Russell Knox, Aaron Badley, Lee Hodges, and Justin Lauer are your top 15 guys in the field that do very well on these long par threes. All right, then I did do comp courses. I actually switched this around. I kind of looked at what I had for comp courses last year. I don't know. They weren't bad, but I think these are a lot better. They bring in the bent greens. They bring in the par 71s and the distance, and also it brings in very easy to drive courses. Now, I'm not saying maybe Wells Fargo don't fit that, but the Byron Nelson and the Rocket Mortgage. Of course, I'm bringing in the 3M, and then I kept the Honda. Like I said, I had a lot of Florida courses here before, and I kind of wanted to switch that up because I think it was the water was kind of moving me in that direction, but I just really feel like the water doesn't come into play that much like it does at the Honda. I feel like definitely comes in more into play. Neither here or there. That is the comp courses I'm using. So PGA National, you got Quail, TPC Craig Ranch, Detroit Golf Club, and of course TPC Twin Cities. And if I look at the last 6 tournaments, 24 rounds of golf against my model, and I like the sniff check on this. Tony Finau, who, of course, has won a couple of these. Hideki Matsuyama, has done well at all of them. Stefan Jaeger, Cameron Champ, of course, past champion. Taylor Pendrith had a really good showing at the Rocket. I think he did pretty good this year, too, if I remember right. Griot, of course, came in second here. Keish Lee, of course, won the AT&T a couple of years. So you can kind of go through this, and then the way that I'm looking for how I want to approach it, these guys are a lot of guys I would pick. So I have no problem if you want to use, 19 players. Give you a little bigger sample size here. This is not a bad player pool, and I'm guessing quite a few of these will be guys that I'm picking to do well and from a DFS perspective. Okay, let's talk about my betting card. I already mentioned a few of the bets I already got out there, but we'll go through it real quick. As you probably already see, I'm kind of leaning with some distance. I'm leaning with best ball strikers, not as concerned with the putters. Some of these guys I've just been betting and hoping that, hey, here's another opportunity, right? Like, we don't have an elevated event. we've only got a few guys. You got the Finaus, the Matsuyamas, but Justin Thomas. I mean, and if his odds are brutal. Let's take a look real quick here. Yeah, 20-1 for Justin Thomas, who is not even resembled that he could even make a cut recently. I mean, I'm not trying to bash on JT, but no one's gonna bet that. Like, I don't think I'd bet him at 50-1 in this. Like, maybe if he got like up over 50-1, I'd bet him in this. But I mean, I've been watching the guy closely, and he is broken. He's in the same spot that Jordan Spieth was a couple of years ago. Ricky Fowler was a year and a half ago. Somehow that bug from the Jupiter posse, literally the just lose your total game, has latched on to JT. And it's I read some things that he was stating that that it's some mental arrows, making some bad choices. But I mean, when you're putting up 80s in certain tournaments, I mean, if you can't make the cut at the John Deere, now I've been stating over and over that they're all pros. They can flip a switch at any time. But this has been going on for a while, and I've been watching it. Like, it first was the putter he lost total confidence in, and now I feel like it's through the whole bag. So, anyways, a little bit of a rant, but let's get back to the guys that I have betting. Lucas Glover, 55-1. Austin Eckroat, 75-1. I actually got him 80-1 and points bet. I believe all of these, you're going to get a better on points bet. And again, this is an eye towards taking the long shots. And like I said, this is a great tournament for it. Kevin Roy got 401. Peter Quest, 80-1 at points bet. Trevor Cohn, he has 350-1. Grayson Sig, more like 150-1 on points bet. Will Gordon, I think I had a free bet. I think he was free betted on DraftKings. Justin Suh, which is kind of a change, right? He's more, I look at as a short game putter. Where's he at from an irons? He's been getting it, although you see, leads the field in putting. But just a guy that I still think when he puts it all together, also came out with that kind of Morikawa class, but definitely did not get the just two because he didn't play that well. I already mentioned Troy Merritt. This is like a perfect sneaky Troy Merritt win kind of course. Ryan Gerard also, I think, ended up like third. I think it was at the Barracuda. So been playing really good golf. EVR, this is purely my own FOMO bet. Don't bet him. But I got him at like 350. So I've been betting him, a few bucks here and there. I'm going to keep going with it because, like I said, I've just seen him do it. Actually, he won the Barracuda before. It didn't have a bad showing at the Barracuda, but man, I think he's an elite iron player. He just needs the rest of the thing. So when I get that kind of number, I'm going to jump on him. Joel Damon also had a pretty good Barracuda. And this kind of fits a Joel Damon course because you need to hit a ton of fairways, be good with the irons. Hopefully Joel Damon's putter is not that bad. And then Trey Mullinax, I think I got like 350-1. And of course, what does he do very well? Pretty good ball striker, got the distance. And we're just going to need that putter to work, but we've seen it happen before. So that is the betting card. All right, with all that said, we will hop over into Fantasy National. Let's go over my picks and analysis. And of course, I kept this forever, the Matthew Wolff, back when he was relevant. You're talking about a guy that just fell off the face of the earth. Yeah, I know he went to the Live Tour, but man, he was way broken before he went to the Live Tour. I hope he's happier. At least he's, definitely got a nice bank account now. And then, of course, you can see the Morikawa when they were coming in the Sunday round there. All right, guys, let's go jump over to Fantasy National. Let's go talk about who I'm going to play from the DFS side. Okay, so I've hopped over into Fantasy National, and as always, my quick plug for them is if you are putting any money in DFS or betting in the golf, you want to use this tool to do deeper analysis. I highly recommend it. Okay, so moving along, of course, as always, we'll be using DraftKings pricing, but you could, of course, use these picks that I'll be going over in any platform like FanDuel or whatever. You're going to notice that I'm looking at the last 24 rounds of golf these guys played. So that's the data that's being pulled in here, or past 6 tournaments, however you want to look at it. Pretty much all the results that you see over here, the past 5 tournaments. And I've got no filters turned on to the left, which you can do deeper analysis, but I've already done my pre-work. And I've got this, what I call a mini model that we're going to be leveraging. And if you want to take a deeper dive and understand the weighting of that, I'll click on it. And pretty much off the tee approach and ball striking, which is technically combining these two. So we're about 75% of that model is all about off the tee and the approach. And then, of course, I included those par threes and that proximity that shows up over 20%. And with that said, we also are going to be able to look at Birdie's game. So quite a bit of information. I kind of call this the dashboard. They call it a sneak peek, but I think it's a lot of information you can get in one area. You've got the salary, projected ownership, cuts made. What have they been doing over the last 24 rounds of golf from a birdie perspective? And as I mentioned, the past 5 tournaments, what are their finishing results? And also, what have they done at the 3M Open in the past? Okay. I think that gives you a good understanding. You're going to notice I've got 25 guys already pre-selected, and we'll kind of walk through this in a bit of a faster pace, but I want to at least get you guys the information and tell you why I'm going the way that I'm going. Right off the bat, in the 10,000 range, you've got 4 different players. You got to make a decision, and out of the 4, I've really got 2 that I'm considering of using in a DFS larger event, the GPP 200K first place event. And with that said, you've got Cameron Young, Tony Finau, Sungjae Im, and Hideki Matsuyama. If you see them highlighted, that's the guys that I'm leaning. I'm also thinking of playing a little bit of Cam. Right, he's been playing great golf. It's just been the putters still letting him down. If we go take a look at Cameron Young, you can see overall what we have with what I don't know about a little over a year. Let's take a look here. Actually, almost since it came off the Corn Ferry, about a year sample of data on the PGA. And if we look over here at the putting, you can see, again, some struggles on some bent greens. The PGA Championship and the Memorial, both of those are bent. And the Travelers, I'm forgetting, that's POA. Okay. But yeah, so long story short, it's the putter that's been hindering. And of course, you would have noticed that the Open, the British Open, we don't have the stroking data in the Fantasy National, but again, from what I could watch and glean, I think he also probably lost some strokes with the putter there. Other than that, though, the guy's been ball striking great, just the putter. And if that clicks, as we saw, he had a good chance to win the John Deere. That was on bent greens. So, yeah, you can make an argument. But if I was going to play anybody in the top 4, I'm going to go with Hideki. I'm going to skip Tony. Again, pretty much the same argument you make for Cam, but also, his ball striking has fallen off. He's missed the cut. What really makes me a little nervous is that missed cut at the Rocket Mortgage, which, of course, he won last year. And then also, of course, you got the Sungjae Im, who had a really nice finish here last year. He had a T2 and a T15. I think I was just thinking from an odds perspective, I feel like he moved up or is at least tied for, 14-1 to win this thing. He's been so hit or miss, kind of Jekyll and Hyde with his ball striking over the past few months, which is not typical. Now, I did pick him for the Open, and he kind of came through, right? He got us a 20th. For his price point, it was not bad. But you can see a miscut before that at the Scottish, hit a miscut at the U.S. Open, a couple of miscuts here, also both of these on bent greens, and where he's had his best outings with a putter. Let me click this real quick so we can see that. Okay, so the St. Jude, that's Bermuda. Arnold Palmer's Bermuda. That's a long time ago. The Greenbrier, I believe, is actually bent. But the Arnold Palmer, again, of course, where he has had his wins was at Shriners and Honda. Both of those are Bermuda. Sanderson Farms, that is Bermuda. So, as I always state, where Sungjae typically does his best work on the putting greens is Bermuda. Of course, we are on bent greens at the 3M Open. Now, that's not all indicative, but it's more of just the Jekyll and Hyde that we've seen at him. So, you got to make a front. You got to make some decisions. And funny enough, I'm going to actually go with Hideki, where you can see just recent form. He's actually gotten way back in. He's also had a good finish here back in 2019. He had a WD in 2022, and I do not remember exactly what that issue was. But, we've also seen him. He was chucked out of a tournament, right? Which one was that where he mismarked his driver with that white paint? But I don't think that was the issue here. I think that could have been. He's had some neck issues in the past. But if we take a look at Hideki real quick, we already know that he's an amazing ball striker. It's been a while since he's had a win. What is his last win? I believe at the Sony, where he came from behind and outdueled my buddy Russ Henley. So that's the last win he had, which was I almost feel like it was 2 years ago because it was so early in the 2022 season. But he's definitely had some better finishes. The putter is still an issue, but the irons, at least if you take kind of the past, 6-7 rounds, have been firing a lot better. This the driver that has been causing him issues, but I felt like it's getting a little better. For him to get that finish, I don't have the stats, but I feel like it's gotten a little better. Of course, at the Travelers, we saw him gain with the driver. So hopefully, honestly, he's just been testing a lot of shafts and heads. Hopefully, he's finally found one that he likes. But Hideki and Cam Young would be the guys that I would start my lineups if I'm going to the 10,000 range, where I'm kind of leaning a little more. It's actually start more in the high nines. I like a few guys here. I like Griot, of course. Had some really nice finishes in the past. Came runner up, T2 last year. Of course, coming off a win at the Charles Schwab and then a really nice finish at the Open. Probably picked him at the John Deere. He missed a cut there, and that is Bent Green, so you can make an argument about that. But again, I like to start probably with my lineups of Griot. I'm going to skip Seb Straka, even though he's had that win at the John Deere and a really nice showing. I mean, he's running in very hot form, but he had quite a few struggles, and I don't know why. He kind of goes almost to like the Siwoo Kim thing that I feel like, where he can literally either miscut or win a tournament, and he kind of does them in bunches where, like two miscuts and then a seventh, a 64th at the Rocket, and then he wins at the John Deere literally just 5-6 days later. I don't know why. I mean, this is purely just a hunch that maybe Seb Straka has an off. A lot of golf lately, a lot of travel. That's kind of my opinion. I mean, Ludwig Eberg, you can make, if you're going on that narrative about, he had the last week off, did play in the Scottish and missed a cut. I'm kind of still understanding what Ludwig does very well. What I do know is that he drives the ball very well and very accurate. And then I was kind of thinking he was a very good around the green and putter, but I've seen that kind of go back and forth. And I would say the one thing that's got me off on Ludwig is the approach, is the irons. I've seen him, hit very difficult shots and stick it within 10 feet. And then I've seen very easy shots that he almost misses the green. So that would be the reason why you could say, you're not going to go with Ludwig at 9,400. It's also quite a steep price tag. I know the field is quite a bit weaker, but yeah, that's a lot to pay. JT, I don't think I really need to go into too many details. Now, of course, JT's here. I guess he's also going to play in the Wyndham. He's trying to make the FedEx Cup. I don't think he's ever missed the FedEx Cup playoffs, but he's definitely in jeopardy right now. The game is broken. If you look at his, buddies, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, like it's like this bug has kind of like passed. It went from like Ricky to Jordan, now Jordan to JT. And I think the best thing for JT is he's just going to need some time off, almost like walk away from the game, put the clubs down for like a month, and almost allow some of the mental and the bad habits. Like it all started with the putter and now has creeped into the whole game. And I'm sure it's so much mental as golf is, but yeah. So, big fan of JT. Just he's going to need some time to get it right. And like I said, I was, for all the other tournaments he's played in, I've tried to make the case that at any point he could flip the switch. But right now, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, he just shot at 82 at the Open. Yes, the second day he shot even, but a couple of the majors now he's put in some 80s, and that is very un-JT-like. So I'm going to take a pass here. I'm going to go with Gary at this price tag. I mean, the ball striking has been just amazing. You can see number 2 in the field over the last, I feel like the last few months, but he still just needs that putter to click. So I'm going to go with a guy that we know he's going to give himself plenty of opportunities, and maybe he starts to make a few putts. Also, where Gary's had some of his success putting is on Bermuda, so it isn't bent, but we're going to hope that it kind of comes through. And then, of course, his win at Pebble Beach which I think that might be his last win, was on POA. Of course, he had that couple opportunities. Yeah, so the U.S. Open, this is actually the last one. That's kind of crazy. Where is his finishes in 2022? Yeah, where he had the Honda and the Arnold Palmer kind of back-to-back on Bermuda. Stefan Jaeger, I feel like it's been a while since I've seen him, but of course he did, I'm guessing he maybe sat out the Barracuda and the Barbasol. I don't remember him playing in those. Maybe he did. Not the greatest showings here, but again, just been playing amazing golf. And again, it's a putter. You're going to notice that a lot of the guys that I'm kind of leaning towards are typically team no putt, but we got quite a few of those guys in the field. I've also got a mix of guys that can putt. I'm going to skip on Cam Davis, just Jekyll and Hyde. Adam Hadwin, I don't like what he does off the tee. Also very Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, look at this, like a miscut, 12th, a 59th, a T2, a miscut. So I guess he's kind of on this path that he should have a pretty good outing, and he's had some really nice showings here. So honestly, you could take a flyer. What makes me a little nervous is what he's been doing off the tee. Let's go take a look real quick at Adam a little deeper. We all know he's got a pretty good short game. Irons, and I guess a lot of it's been the irons. Either they hit, then it seems like he hits. Of course, he went nuts at the Rocket Mortgage, gaining almost 10 strokes on bent greens. Let me take a quick look here. How did he actually do what he did at the 3M Open in the past? Kind of a mixed bag. So he had a good outing with the irons once, twice, and the putter both. So he fired on all sides back in 2021 and 2019. Lost the irons and last year, and really didn't putt very well. I don't know. Like I said, I mean, kind of an interesting. I kind of passed on him visually just because of what he's been doing off the tee and the sporadic. But hey, man, golf is funny, and if he's on this kind of path of either almost miscutting or top 5 for 8,900 is not a bad play. So maybe if I put more lineups in, I will sprinkle in some Adam Hadwin, the guy that I wasn't going to go really thinking about playing, but JJ Spawn also had a nice Barracuda. Was up there. I think he ended up like top 10, something like that. But of course, his one win that we know of is at the Valero, which is actually Bermuda greens. But again, I kind of like what I'm seeing here. 8,800 is a little pricey, but it kind of changes up. I mean, he's very accurate off tee, not very long. Let's go take a look. I want to see his irons have been doing. Again, I don't have the Barracuda information. So it does seem like the irons have kind of come back. He was in a bit of a lull right here. Had a good showing at the Tournament of Champions, the Sony, and then kind of went a bit of a funk. But I feel like he's kind of making his way back out of that. So kind of interested in him. Sahith, same reason why I didn't play him at the Open. He's just so volatile off the tee. There is a lot of water here. Again, I said it's what is shown is that these fairways are some of the easier to hit, but I'm a little worried about what could happen there. I was on Killer Keith, and then there was something that got me off him. I guess it's the irons. Again, if I had to pick the one thing that I want the best out of here, I mean, ball striking I mentioned, but also the approach. I mean, I guess if you broke it down to a single, because ball striking takes in off the tee and approach, the number one thing I want my guys to do very well. If I had to just only one stroke gain category that I could build a team with, it'd be irons, and that's where he's been really struggling. I'm going to go to Patrick Rogers. I've been playing him quite a bit. Of course, you're going to see 3 missed cuts, but of course, I mentioned earlier in the show that he should have won the Barracuda and just didn't score enough at the end, and it had a birdie opportunity from like 10 feet uphill that just kind of skirted. Oh, yeah. And then also in the playoff, he hit a perfect drive into a divot, and it was not in front of the divot. Like the front of the divot, you can get the club behind the ball. He was at the very beginning of the divot, so had a hard time getting the club to get it out, hence had to chunk it, and that's what happened. So I'm going to go back to Patrick. JT Poston has shown some life here. So, I mean, you could definitely make an argument. Of course, he had a win at John Deere on bent greens. Kind of interesting. I mean, I really haven't thought a lot again because of the iron. So I'm going to take a pass. Let me, I need to see a little bit more out of JT. It was a lot of bad golf for a long time. I mean, let's go take a quick look at this. I feel like he was almost all year. I mean, if you take just a snap of from April to June, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 missed cuts. Best showing was a 38. So gonna pass on that. Mark Hubbard was kind of interesting, right? He also had that little run earlier this year where it looked like he was gonna get a win. Let's take a quick look at that. We all know Ben is his best putting surface. So I guess I've been around this time frame right here. I feel like he even had a better stint. Maybe it was a swing season. Anyways, so yeah, I have no problem if you want to play Mark. Just not for me. I'm going to go to Lucas Glover, $100 cheaper. Of course, same thing. We've been waiting. I mean, really shocking. Even from a betting odds, I think his odds are, I think he came out like 40 to 1, something like that if I remember right. I might just, no, because I bet him, I think at 50 to 1. Anyways, that, the putter that he has switched to has been working again. I mentioned this a little bit, kind of in between the pendulum that we know. I mean, well, think about what Adam Scott uses, same kind of putter. But yeah, the Barbasol, the Deere, and the Rocket Mortgage, 2 of these are actually bent. And I'm trying to remember the Barbasol, the Barracuda's in Truckee, California. So I believe that's a POA mix. I don't remember. Yeah, bent. So there you go. So all bent greens. Now, I would say it's not so much the surface as he is just confident with that new putter. I think Vincent Norman's a little pricey. Yes, he just won the Barbasol and had a good showing at the Rocket, but had a bunch of miscuts before that. And, of course, he kind of came on at least my radar at the Zurich when he teamed up with, I cannot remember, another European guy. But I'm going to pass on Norman. Bill Hosler also had a good showing. It was kind of in contention at the Barracuda. So, but I'm going to take a pass. I actually just added Aaron Rye, kind of with a JJ Spawn play. So I'm probably going to put some teams or maybe a mix, maybe put 3 very good, accurate guys, but not length. And then you could put a guy like a Nikolai Horgaard. So Eric Cole would fit into that Aaron Rye bucket and the JJ Spawn. So I'm going to build some like all ball striking kind of lineups, some distant, guys that, hit the ball pretty far. Just kind of mix 3 and 3s together is kind of my thought process, if that makes sense to you. But yeah, look at this whole group. You got quite a mix, right? You got Taylor Pendrith, had a good showing at the Barbasol, right? Also, back-to-back good Rocket mortgages, which is all on bed greens. And he's got that length, so, kind of interested in that. But then Eric Cole, right, had a good showing at the RBC. And wasn't really on him, but again, I want to play kind of these builds of kind of mixing what I've always noticed is typically if you build all bomber lineups or all whatever, no putt lineups, typically it's kind of a mix of guys that end up at the top of the leaderboard. And that's kind of my plan here is, get a couple of kind of like the Eric Coles, a couple of plotters, and then a couple of elite ball strikers and maybe a guy that, with some distance and hope that the irons fire. So I got Aaron Rye, Nikolai Horgaard, Eric Cole, and Taylor Pendrith. You can kind of see, all have had some nice finishes. All been playing pretty good golf, but all of them have no history here at the 3M in the past. Akshay Bhatia, funny enough, I think I mentioned earlier in the show that after his win, he made the FedEx Cup playoffs and then started to look a little further. Actually, he ended up 92nd. So he is not in the FedEx Cup playoffs, but he has withdrawn from this tournament. I think, A, to enjoy the win, I get that, but I think he thought he was good to go. Maybe he was worried that he could, I don't know. Maybe I'm sure he'll play the Wyndham, but right now he is actually not in the FedEx Cup playoffs. Maybe he thought it was 500 FedEx points, but it was actually 300 FedEx points. I don't know. But I just kind of saw that and thought it was interesting that he withdrew from the tournament, probably thinking he was good to go. Alex Noren, no. Might have picked him for the Open. I don't remember now, which I guess he had a T23. Go say said he had some pretty good showings there, but no, thank you. Ryan Fox, nah. I think I'm gonna pass. Cam Champ, of course, I already mentioned earlier in the show that picked him in 2021 for the win. Hit 80-1, and even though this doesn't show, he also played, I believe, the Barracuda and had a pretty good showing there. So I feel like his game is getting a little better. Of course, he's going to a course he's very comfortable with. A 16th last year and a first, so, and that's typically off some bad results. Told you Justin Saab, I bet him, but I'm not going to play him at DFS. Tom Hoagie's kind of interesting because I mentioned the one thing that you really want here is a guy that is hitting his irons really well. And early in the year, Tom Hoagie was like leading the PGA with approach, and then you can kind of see it when it kind of hit or miss. We don't have the data from the Genesis Scottish Open, but I'm guessing he gained. Let me see what he's done. I want to see from a stroke perspective at the 3M. So pretty good showings. Made the cut last 3 times. Had a 4th last year. Went nuts with the irons. I doubt he's going to gain 10 strokes. But trying to see his best was the Players. So that was all the way back in middle of March time frame. Boy, time has flown. It is almost the end of the season. But anyways, just kind of interesting for me. I might see what his ownership is and take a flyer on him. Seabez, no thank you. Kuchar, nope. You see, it's been kind of a struggle bus since. Had best showing was Valero? Is there a Valspar or Valero? Starts with a V, where he had a really nice outing, and that was really it. Yeah, Valero. Other than that, it's been kind of a bad year. Austin Eckroat, I bet him. He was on a nice hot run there. I believe it was AT&T Byron Nelson. He had a good chance of winning. Yep, right here. Had a really nice putting outing. Those are bent greens. Also a comparable course I'm using. So I'm good with Austin Eckroat. Adam Svensson, I think, is a good fit for this course. But he's been in, kind of a bad form, but he has shown up at the John Deere, and I don't exactly remember what he did. He was, I believe, in the field for the Barracuda, but not high enough for it to stick in my brain. So again, you could take a flyer on him. I have no issues. Dougie Gim, again, does the T degree thing is good. Pretty good finishes, pretty good showing. So for 7,400, I'm going to take a flyer on him. Garrett Kiggle, for some reason, was just kind of interested in me. I think it was more when I was thinking distance. Also has had some really nice finishes recently. Missed a cut here last year, but I think I'd rather go to a Peter Quest. Of course, had some, Monday qualifies, and then that was at the AT&T Bar Nelson, which got him on my radar. The guy can putt, even though I don't have putting stats pulled up because it's not a big concern. Also, he's scoring. So for 7,400, also I think you can bet him at 90 to 1. And I think that's still offered, at least it was like last night. I think it's a good bet. Why not? 3M Open will give opportunities. Occasionally had a nice showing here in 2021, but just a ton of miscuts. So I'm going to take a pass. Lee Hodges, you see kind of a Jekyll Hyde. Either he's top 25 or miscut over the last 5. Also at a T16. So again, you can see that at least a lot of over the past 6 tournaments, he's green or yellow, so no like glaring issues. But now I'd rather go to Brandon Wu, which really bad run of form. He's never played here, but what I do know about Brandon Wu is really it comes down to the putter. So he would fit into that really good ball striking team, but just needs that putter to flip. Let's take a look at this real quick. What has been going on with the Wu? So those were bent greens at RBC Canadian at Oakdale. So just want to side note that. I told you they have played a lot of bent here. Typically in the beginning of the year, it's all Bermuda or past Palm. And then kind of as the year starts to kind of go halfway through, then you hit all the bent courses, especially a lot of even the majors have been on bent. But you can see a third, a 23rd, and 9th. Like if either he's up there or he's miscut in a second at Pebble Beach. So that's just kind of my pick. I'm going to go with that. Ches Reavie, not a bad play at all. Been a lot of solid finishes. He had a chance. Where was he leading at? Because I cashed him out. It's amazing how these all kind of bird. The Travelers. Yeah, so I cashed him out, and on Sunday, he just had a bad Sunday. And again, those are POA greens we just looked through. All right, I'm going to kind of start moving through there. You can see the guys that I'm out on. Sam Stevens, Taylor Montgomery, I just feel like you could do his putt right now. Sam Bennett, of course, came out of our radar at the Masters. I don't know, I kind of lump him into almost the Eric Cole bucket, but Eric Cole's actually outperformed him. You can see it's the irons. But I mean, he's got a good putter, pretty good short game, not bad off the tee, pretty accurate. I'm going to go back to Ryan Palmer, kind of lump him right in with the Glover, Griot kind of builds. Even though he missed a cut, I'm hoping that hurts his ownership. But yeah, a lot of good showings. Had a T31 last year. So pretty good price tag for him. Nick Hardy, actually, of course, he was the local kid playing from out of Illinois for the John Deere. And, you could kind of see that helped him a little bit, I felt like. It wasn't like he was having that great of showings beforehand. But really good ball striker, just usually a very bad putter. Grayson Sig had a really nice finish here. I actually bet him. Not sure if I'm going to, right now I'm not picking him in my player pool for the DFS side. Nate Lashley, kind of back and forth. He's not done very well here, so that's probably a little bit why I'm out. You got Kevin Yu, who I actually wanted to bet. I don't know if I did. I think he was coming in around 90 to 1 too. I think he could be some guy that could come out again, a 7th, a 6th. Not a lot of golf, but what he has done, he's showed me some good things. So I kind of like him. Ben Griffin, I think he's a really good around the green. Just kind of struggles with ball striking. Billy Horschel, the game's still pretty broken. Neesmith, I've kind of just given up on you actually winning. So this should be a perfect time, right? I think the last time he had a chance was Valspar. Let's go scroll down. Where's that? Well, Shriners. And there's a Valspar that I was thinking of. So I forgot about the Shriners opportunity. Those are all Bermuda, though. So, I mean, the model typically loves them, but the putter is just brutal. Davis Thompson's had a couple decent showings. I'm going to go back to my guy, Will Gordon. Had a good Genesis, and I don't know if he actually played in the Barracuda. Doesn't resonate, but low ownership. I think he's one of the better ball strikers. Again, just kind of falls out of the wayside because of around the green and putter. So we need that to work. Luke List is actually WD'd. Something about, I think, a wrist injury, I think I saw. Matty Wallace, nope. I played you a little bit in Europe, and that's where that's going to end. Colin Taryn. See how many people jump off that bandwagon. He's had a couple miscuts. I had a 7th year. I think it's a good fit for him this course, so I'm going to play some of that. Who else we got here? Dylan Wu, got no problems, just not making the team. Michael Kim, I've told you guys I've just been so hit or miss with him, so I'm just out. CT Pan after he withdrew and kind of killed some of my lineups. I believe that was for like the Travelers. But he had this really nice showing at the RBC and the AT&T, and then the risk, it just keeps haunting him, trying to see if anybody else. So Troy Merritt, I told you I'm betting him, and it just seems like a Troy Merritt. I mean, you can see both of these are bent greens, lower than 7,000 in the salary. So I'm going to jump on that. I mentioned Justin Lauer has been just lights out putting on bent greens. I think he's been leading the field, or at least for the last 6 tournaments. I mean, you can see that right here. Almost gains a half stroke on bent. You can see the putter been really well. The irons haven't been bad. I think I bet him for the Barracuda, and he did not make the cut. So it's probably a little reason right now why I'm not on him. Joel Damon, I think I told you guys I bet him, but man, has he been in a bad run of form. But had a decent Barracuda. Adam Long, right, had a good showing here back in 2020. Pretty good last 3 years. So a pure course history. And then you can see the Barbasol, he showed up. So that could be kind of interesting. You can see, projected ownership's higher than I would expect for Adam Long. Ryan Gerard, this is more of just a fantasy kind of points play, almost like a cheap Cam Davis. I just feel like the guy, yes, he's sporadic at times, but the guy can score. You see that a bit here. So that's why that play. James Hahn also didn't have a bad Barracuda. He was up there. Good ball striker, terrible putter, so fits right into that camp. I'm going to jump back on Carson Young. So, I've kind of been touting Colin Taryn and Carson Young as kind of my 6,000 plays, especially in this field. I think that's still a pretty good value. You can see Carson Young was probably the better play out of these guys, especially from a scoring perspective. Trevor Cohn, this could be a bit of hoping because I'm betting him also. But I mean, you see the ball striking has been great. He had a nice showing at the Barbasol. I also think he was up there at the Barracuda. I have to verify that. But yeah, some decent finishes. So, rookie off the Corn Ferry just hits it a mile. Let's see there. Yeah, 318 on average. That's pretty strong. So gains with the driver, had a really nice outing with the iron, so hopefully that stays. And it's kind of the putter. The Byron Nelson is on bent, so he did gain 5 strokes there with the putter. All right, the rest of these guys, I'm out. Let me see if anybody else. Oh yes, Piercy. This is purely just, this is such a Scott Piercy thing that he would. He's had a couple good finishes here. Right, had a chance to win last year. The guy makes birdies, but he makes a ton of bogeys. I've stayed this multiple times. So just purely from a point play, if he makes the weekend, typically he definitely can pace from a points what his salary is. EVR, I bet him, and I told you guys don't do it. It's just, this is more my own little thing. I've always got, like I said, that Brokeback Mountain pick or FOMO pick that I just get stuck on because I just think that I'm going to outsmart it. I told you I bet Trey Mullinex, which you see terrible form, but I also think it's not a bad fit for him with the distance, and he can get hot. And I believe that's it. All right, let's jump up here and summarize this for you and then get you guys out of here. All right, so as I mentioned, I've got 25 guys right now that are locked in for my player pool. I mentioned there is some, that I'll add and move out, but this is the core group. And number 1, Hideki Matsuyama coming in at the most expensive for me, 10,000. And Griot, Gary Woodland, Stefan Jaeger, JJ Spawn, Patrick Rogers, Lucas Glover, Aaron Rye, Nikolai Horgaard, Eric Cole, Taylor Pendrith, Cameron Champ, Austin Eckrow, Dougie Gim, Peter Quest, Brandon Wu, Ryan Palmer, Kevin Yu, Will Gordon, Colin Tarrant, Troy Merritt, Ryan Gerard, Carson Young, Trevor Cohn, and Scott Piercy would be my cheapest guy in at 6,600. So that's my player pool. Hope that helps you guys off from a DFS perspective. And let's jump out and wrap this thing up. All right, guys, thanks so much again for spending some time with me. And you got the course breakdown. We did a bunch of custom stat models, went over all the analysis from a player side that I'm interested in. And hopefully, again, that gives you guys a bit of an edge. And I'll put out a quick show tomorrow from an ownership perspective. Also, if I see anything else, we'll look at weather. Right now, I looked at weather. I haven't seen anything that kind of stood out to me, but we'll keep an eye on it. And yeah, going to show out for you guys a real quick one tomorrow. All the best to us, and I'll talk to you guys later. And as always, if you would do me the honor, click that like button, share with anybody else that you know is just hankering to play some DFS golf. And if you've not clicked that subscribe button, I would appreciate you doing that. And last but not least, follow me on Twitter, where I will keep you updated on anything that I see that you guys should need to know. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Have a great day.